Welcome to the Candidates Forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Northwest Wayne County. My name is Angela Ryan and I am president of the local league. We're very grateful to the Presbyterian Village of Westland for allowing us to hold this forum at their facility. Tonight we have a two-part forum. We welcome the Democratic candidates running in the primary election for the 16th District State Representative, followed by the Democratic candidates running for the 6th District State Senate. Since the Republican candidates for each of these positions are running unopposed in the primary, they are not part of tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or oppose any candidate running for any office. The League does take positions on issues after careful study, so you may see our name attached to an issue that we are advocating for or opposing. Membership in the League is open to all citizens who are at least 16 years of age. So if you're interested in joining this public service organization, please let us know. And we have membership applications. Sorry, those are my visual aids. They're on the table back there with the lamp. They indicate that the student membership rate is $25, but that's currently reduced to $5 for a limited time only. So if you know any students who are interested in joining us, 16 years or older, we will be happy to have their membership. The League's main mission is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation in government. One of the ways we do that is by having forums such as this one tonight. The League is also preparing a nonpartisan voter guide, which can be found online at www.vote411.org in early July. You can also find the link to the voter guide on our website, lwvnorthwestwayne.org. And another item we have back there is this bookmark. The two websites are on the back of the bookmark. That's also on the table, so be sure to take one before you leave. If you'd like to ask questions of the candidates, and we definitely encourage you to do this, please write your question on a card and hand it to one of the ushers in the aisle. There's an usher, there's another one back there, and they'll get it over to those of us who are reviewing the questions. Our moderator will ask as many questions as time allows. Your questions should be brief, to the point, and they should not include personal attacks on the candidates. We reserve the right to screen the questions for duplication and clarity, and they should be a question that would apply to all of the candidates to be able to answer. Many voters don't understand the importance of voting in a primary election. If you don't vote in a primary, it's very possible that your favorite candidate will not even be on the ballot in November. Remember that for the primary election, you will have to choose either a Republican or Democratic ballot. You can only vote for candidates in the party that you choose, and this rule only applies to the primary election. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and not of the League of Women Voters. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, League member Roberta Young, who will provide you with more details about tonight's forum.
Thank you, Angela. Can everybody hear me in the back? Good evening. My name is Roberta Young. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Northwest Wayne County. We're pleased that you could join us tonight as we hear from the Democratic candidates running for Michigan's primary election for the 16th District State Representative and the 6th District State Senate. Our forum will be in two parts. The first hour will be devoted to the Democratic State Representative candidates, and after a short 5-minute break to change candidates, we will seat the Democratic Senate candidates. We ask that the audience remain seated during this time. As Angela said, our questions tonight are coming from the audience, and we have also received a number of questions emailed to us in advance. Each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute opening statement, a 1-minute response to all questions, and a 1-minute closing statement. We will rotate the order of the candidate who responds first. That means that with the questions, Mr. Coleman will start. That's number 1, number 2, number 3. And at the end, with the closing statements, Mr. McDermott will have the first one. League members, Lena Packer and Lisa Aswini will time for the program. They will be holding up cards so the candidates know when their time is up. There are 4 candidates running for the Democratic primary in the 16th District State Representative. They are Kevin Coleman, Bill Johnson, Jacob Johnson, and Mike McDermott. Unfortunately, Mr. Bill Johnson could not attend tonight's forum. Michigan's 16th District covers Wayne and most of Westland. The candidates drew lots to determine their seating order, and we'll begin the opening statements with Kevin Coleman. Please introduce yourself and give your opening statement.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for hosting this event. I've been really glad to be able to serve. I've been a councilman for the city of Westland for the last 4 years. I was elected in 2013. I originally ran for office in 2011, and I was very proud of my service at the city. I have a 100% attendance record as a councilman. I show up, I get results, I work hard, I connect with people. I visit every neighborhood in our city. I visited every neighborhood in Wayne. I look forward to hopefully being your next state representative. Some of the other things I enjoy are volunteering. I volunteered at Wayne Main Street. I work with the Westland Veterans Association to raise money for veterans and for the Veterans Memorial Garden of Westland. I volunteered at Rouge River Creek Cleanup. I've helped out at the Senior Center. I've been in Westland for almost 25 years, and I'm nearly 35 years old. I love the people here. I love living here. I plan to stay here.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Hi, my name is Jacob Johnson, and I am running to be your state representative because I believe in a better future for our communities. I currently work for the city of Wayne as a clerk in the city hall. I am in charge of a program that helps people and inspires me every day to go out there and help people. I have lived in the Wayne-Westland area for 25 years. I'm 25 years old. I'm a proud graduate of the Wayne-Westland Community School District. Go Zebras. I am a proud graduate of Wayne State University, where I studied public policy and government. So with my volunteer service, I'm an Eagle Scout. I help out with the Westland Youth Athletic Association. I think it's time that we took back Michigan.
Good evening, and thank you to the League, and thank you to everybody for attending here tonight. My name is Mike McDermott. I am a lifelong Democrat, and I am running to represent you and to bring your voice to Lansing. I have been the guy on the ground working on Democratic campaigns my whole life, whether it was registering voters in 2008 when I was a student at Wayne State University, where I studied public policy, political science, and Michigan politics, whether it was working on gubernatorial campaigns in 2010 or 2014, whether it was 2016 working for Secretary Clinton's campaign in a number of Democratic races. This is the most important election we have faced in our lives. We have to flip this state. We have to turn this state to red to blue, and I hope that you invest in a candidate who has invested in you and who has invested in our community, volunteering with the JCs, the Kiwanis, and the Westland Democratic Club. Thank you.
We'll have the first question now for Mr. Coleman. How do you plan to fund roads and education?
Our state has, we know that we can do better as a state. We need to invest. We need to invest. That doesn't mean spend all the money, but that means spend money. That means we need to boost per pupil funding in the lowest funded districts, like Wayne and Westland. We need to get our roads fixed. It's an embarrassment to a lot of the people who live in Metro Detroit how bad our roads are, especially when we have people coming from other places. How do we fund it? We know that we're going to see a spike in revenue. We know that marijuana will be on the ballot and is likely to pass. Polling shows that. The state's going to get a whole lot more money. I want to shout out our current state rep in the back row, Bob Kozowski. His bill recently passed to allow sports betting. That's going to be a big boost to our tax revenue. The money's there. We need to invest it. We need to put it towards what counts: our roads, our cities, our schools, fixing our bridges. There's a lot that we can do, and I look forward to being a part of that.
Same question.
So with roads and schools and education in general, we have to do something. We are currently in a state of repair. We need to get to a state of maintain. And that's going to take a lot of money and a lot of manpower over the next 20 years. You know, we have resources. There are resources in the state of Michigan. Different groups have different resources that can be spread, can be shared. With revenue, let's stop giving huge tax breaks to businesses. If we can have a $650 million tax incentive till Amazon comes to Detroit, why can't we have that $650 million to fix the roads for the people who live, play, and work here in the state of Michigan?
So our kids here in Wayne Westland get $7,800 per pupil for funding in the classroom. Seems like a lot, right? Kids in Birmingham, kids in Bloomfield, they get almost $14,000 per pupil. Why? Because they're what's called a hold harmless school district, and they can do special operating millages. So what we're saying is the zip code you live in can determine the quality of the education that you get. So we can increase per pupil funding and level the playing field for every child by adopting a graduated income tax, by, as former Councilman Coleman said, adopting Representative Kosowski's sports betting law, by legalizing marijuana, where in the state of Colorado they have a $55 million budget surplus from legalization. So these are initiatives that we can take to fund our schools. As far as our roads, 4 things we need to do. 1, invest in better quality material. Quit patching the same potholes over and over again. 2, enforce the road warranties to hold contractors to account when they cut corners and don't do the job right the first time. 3, have weight limits on all of our trucks. And 4, mass transit.
The next question will start with Mr. Johnson. If the Democrats take control of Lansing, what would you do to make charter schools accountable?
Well, first off, I believe in public education, and I believe in keeping education public. So charter schools should not receive any state funding at all. That should be going to the pupils in the public school system. You want to send your kid to a private school, you can send them to a private school. I don't believe in charter schools. I don't believe in school vouchers. I believe in the hardworking men and women of my public school district, where I went to school and I had a great public education. So, I mean, I've gone on, I've been successful in life, and so I want to support the Wayne Wausau Community School District. I want to support, you know, all of the school districts in the area so that we can have bright futures for all students.
Go out there and take a drive down Merriman Road until you cross into the city of Inkster. They don't have a public school district anymore because Edison Public Schools, a charter district, destroyed their public school district. An agenda run by Dick and Betsy DeVos has taken what was the best education system in the nation here in the state of Michigan and run it into the 44th education system. Number 1, we have to regulate charter schools by saying that no for-profit entity gets a single penny of public school dollars. Number 2, the cap that Jennifer Granholm lifted on charter schools has to be reinstated, and we have to regulate the number of charter schools that we have here in the state of Michigan. Number 3, we have to hold charter schools accountable to the same academic standards that our public schools are. What's going on now, what's happening to our kids and our teachers is highway robbery by for-profit educational institutions, and it has to stop today.
Thank you for the question. If you speak with people on the other side of the aisle, they'd say that our charter schools were set up to help failing districts. But like we've heard, we know that a lot of those failing districts are getting less money than they got 10, 15, 20 years ago. If our tax dollars are going towards charter schools, we need to make sure that they're held to the same standards, that the teachers are certified and held to the same standards, and that they're not getting an advantage over the public districts. I'm a product of public education. I went to Livonia Churchill High School. I went to Western Michigan University. I was fortunate enough to receive some scholarships to go there. I know that our public universities, our public education, they create great opportunities for people to grow, to learn, and to really nourish their personality. Charter schools have an advantage over public systems because they're not held to those standards. I don't want to see our tax dollars to continue to fund charters.
Thank you. The next question is for Mrs. McDermott. Many Muslim and African American residents who travel down Michigan Avenue have been stopped and harassed by Westland police. What will you do to stop this and encourage cultural competence training?
Absolutely, terrific question. So if you visit my website, mcdermottformichigan.com, I've got a comprehensive 30-page policy document. And one of the things I address in that document is that very question. What can we do? Well, we have to provide our officers with better training in racial sensitivity training. What's going on now to many of our African American, Hispanic, and Muslim brothers and sisters is indeed racial discrimination and harassment. Whether you look at the recent case with William Marshall or whether you look at situations that have happened in the past, unfortunately, they're right to feel that way. And so we have to provide greater racial sensitivity training for our officers. We have to provide them with better pay and better resources to deal with situations that do get out of hand in the city of Westland or the city of Wayne. So there is much we can do to really tackle this issue, and we cannot continue the status quo because there are people who are being discriminated against. It is racially biased policing in some instances, and it has to stop.
Mr. Coleman?
Thank you for the question. I'll tell you that racial discrimination, discrimination based on sex, based on religion, based on mental faculty, people with disabilities, these are all things I dealt with as a city councilman for the last 4 years. I bring the experience of having dealt with these issues firsthand to this candidacy for state representative. I worked with our police chief and had discussions with him privately and publicly several times about how we're going to train our officers, talk to our officers, and really our police officers are in a leadership position. It's not just the politicians, it's the people out there on the street. It's not just the politicians making the laws, it's the people on the street enforcing the laws. If they're going to be expected to be in a leadership position, we need to know firsthand and speak with all of them and know that they are aware that there are so many different viewpoints out there. There are so many people of different backgrounds, and we need to treat them all fairly.
Hi, as an LGBT individual, I have faced discrimination every day of my life. I, have had a job where I was scared that I was going to get fired because my boss found out that, I had a boyfriend. That is a living fear that I have had. I understand discrimination. I understand where this idea of being attacked by police is coming from. We need to do everything we can to make sure officers are trained, and that is a continuous working process. It's not a, hey, we're going to have this seminar and it's going to be okay. We need to work every day to make sure that the top training in every police department all across the state of Michigan, all across this country, so that everyone can get an equal opportunity and treated fairly under law, because it is blind justice.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman will have the next question. Can you reach across the aisle to your opposition and make something happen? Please give an example.
Yeah, this is something that, and again, going back to, I bring experience to this position. I've lived it, I've worked it, I've invested so much of my heart, my time, my energy, my sweat into working for the residents and serving the public. When I first came onto the city council, I didn't necessarily agree or get along with everybody. I ran on my own platform with my own ideas. I wanted to make a change, that's why I got involved in government. But what did I do? I learned. And I grew, and I learned that we have to work together to get things done. You can't just go to somebody you disagree with and say, it's my way, not your way. You have to be able to work those things out. You have to be able to sit down with the other side who might be 100% dead against you, or maybe even campaigned against you. And you have to ask them, how are we going to work out things on behalf of our residents, on behalf of our citizens? If you budge on this issue, I'll budge on that issue. You don't give up democratic values. You're still a Democrat, but you get things done.
Same question.
So I have not had the same opportunity that Mr. Coleman has had to be in an elected position and work across the aisle. But I have worked with my neighbors every day, worked with people who I don't agree with on everything, to make my community better, to go and do road cleanup, to do beautification of neighborhoods. I have person-to-person experience of crossing a boundary, helping out the neighbor who, when I was 10 yelled at me and told me never come on her property ever again, and I'm mowing her lawn now because I believe in helping out. It's about setting aside differences and finding a way to go for the common goal, for the common good.
There's going to be issues that we just aren't going to find common ground and we aren't going to agree with. But there are going to be many issues that we're able to broker a deal and get things done in Lansing. A great example of that is our state representative sitting back there. He has more legislation passed than anyone on the Democratic side of the aisle. And that's because he's found issues that Republicans are willing to accept and find a middle ground on and get that legislation passed. If I want to go up there and enact a graduated income tax, I can't expect to probably find a whole lot of Republican support behind that. But if we're looking at things like sports betting or marijuana legalization, or we're looking at criminal justice reform, there are issues that Republicans and Democrats can come together on and find real common ground to get some comprehensive legislation passed. We throw enough rocks in Lansing, and we throw enough stones at the other side. I've got my blue shirt, he's got his red shirt, we can't get anything done. I don't believe that. I think we can find issues where Republicans and Democrats do agree and get some real legislative reform enacted.
Thank you. The next question will be for Mr. Johnson. What experience do you bring to the table for state representative?
So, like I said in my introduction, I studied public policy at Wayne State University. I took classes specifically on how, the history of Michigan politics. I understand, how police officers work. They're street level bureaucrats. They have the ultimate discretion in enforcing the law. They get to make the decision, am I pulling that guy over or am I pulling that guy over? So it's the trickle down. I want to go to Lansing and be someone who's actually studied how public policy works and go in and make public policy that works for everyone. I currently work for the city of Wayne. I work in local government, and I'm watching as, the city scrambles to try and find ways to do things and keep up services with the lack of state revenue sharing that we are getting.
So when I was 5 years old, other kids were reading the funny papers, and I was watching C-SPAN on my dad's lap. Laugh if you like, but that's the kind of person I am. Similar to Mr. Johnson, when I was at Wayne State, I studied public policy, Michigan politics, legislative processes, and for dozens and dozens of Democratic campaigns over a number of years, I've been the grunt guy, the guy in the field, knocking doors, phone banking, calling, getting out the vote, getting people registered, driving turnout to make sure that we have voters participating and Democrats up and down the ballot getting elected. So I've been the guy on the ground for the Democratic Party. When people have needed me, pick up the phone, call me, I have been there. I've also gone around and knocked almost 12,000 doors in the community for this year's election because I believe that you have to talk to people to understand how the legislation you pass actually affects people's lives. Because if you don't know, you don't know.
Thanks. I've talked about being on the city council. It's probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done. I've learned so much, I've grown so much as a person, and I love it. I love doing that. I don't know if I'll serve in public office my whole life, but I'll tell you for now, I want to keep it up. And I'll tell you what that experience taught me. It taught me not to quit. I ran for office in 2011, and I failed. I ran again in 2013, and I succeeded. I ran in 2017 and I was not elected. I'm running again this year because I'm not going to quit for you. I'm going to keep working for you. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to hold on to my values. I'm going to stay honest. I'm going to stay accessible. If you call me, I call you back. I visit every neighborhood, citywide and district-wide. As a councilman, I probably visited every neighborhood probably 3 or 4 times during a 4-year term. So every year I come knocking on some people's doors and visiting them and finding out what they care about.
The next question will start with Mr. McDermott. If the next governor repeals taxes on seniors, how would you replace the funds to balance the budget?
It's a terrific question. So I have 2 parents who spent 40 years working at what we may know as Michigan Bell or AT&T. And both of them retired, and both of them unjustly and unfairly got their pensions taxed. The reason they got their pensions taxed is because when Rick Snyder took office, they redid the Michigan business tax and cut the corporate tax rate. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of trickle-down economics, where we're told by Republicans if we just cut taxes for people at the top and big corporations, the money's going to fall down to the rest of us. So I would, once again, rework the Michigan business tax structure, restore the tax credit on retiree pensions, and also enact a graduated income tax to get additional revenue. Anywhere between $850 and $950 million if we were to count on the Democratic House caucus estimates for a graduated income tax. But double taxing retiree pensions, people who live on fixed incomes trying to afford prescription drugs, food, water, shelter, is criminal.
I think the worst thing about the tax on pensions is that people who work their whole lives, they weren't budgeting that. They couldn't anticipate that. And then out of the blue, boom, we're chopping that down. We're taxing that. We're taking your money. If that can be overturned, and I'll tell you, as a candidate, as a Democrat running for state representative, if I succeed in August, I'll go to other districts and help other Democrats get elected. I'll be in Livonia helping dance centers. I'll be out in other districts helping other Democrats flip seats so we can get these kinds of things overturned. We need somebody like this who's going to be on the ground to make up for that revenue. We know revenue in our state's going up. We have a surplus right now. We have a new recreational marijuana that's going to probably get passed based on all the polling. We're going to get millions out of that. We've legalized sports betting and casinos. Our revenue is going up. We're going to be able to fill that hole. Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I completely agree with, both of them. We need to do something for the elderly, take the tax off the pension. I work for, like I said, I work for the City of Wayne. I'm a program coordinator for the Water Residential Assistance Program. I watch as seniors come in every week and go, hey, here's 20 bucks towards my water bill because that's all I can afford this week because I had to pay for my medication. The tax on seniors is more than the pension tax. It's the prescription tax, it's the healthcare tax. Let's find ways to make healthcare affordable and get rid of the pension tax so that seniors can enjoy their golden years and not have to choose between, am I taking those pills or am I eating today?
Mr. Coleman, if elected, will you work to reduce the out-of-control auto insurance rates in Michigan?
The insurance industry, unfortunately, has a huge stronghold on our politicians in Lansing. We know that. If you elect me, you're electing somebody that they don't have their hooks into. I will fight to lower auto insurance as much as possible. People in counties like Wayne County, they're redlined, they're discriminated just for living in this area. Your rates are higher. Senior citizens, when I knock on their doors, this is the #1 issue I'm hearing the last few weeks. We need to put regulation on these insurance rates. We need to make things fair. I care about people. I don't want to see people not be able to afford to drive, especially senior citizens who still might need to. Obviously, if we're able to pass it, mass transit is something that will help all people, will help seniors, will help people of all ages. But people need to be able to afford to drive in our state.
So, I'm 25 years old, I pay some of the highest rates because, I'm young and I'm inexperienced and I'm a horrible driver. Hey, it's been a while. Auto rates, they're high. And I see drivers like my sister on the road and I go, you shouldn't be behind a wheel. But I also realize that, there are people who, we're paying for people who don't have insurance. We're paying to line the profit pockets of auto insurance companies. So, it's an issue I want to look into. It's an issue that's not going to be fixed overnight. But while we're doing that, let's fund public transit so the people that, insurance is way too expensive or they live in a red line district, they can get on a bus. They can take a train from Detroit to Ann Arbor and go to work. Let's get people back to work with public transit and lower the auto insurance rates.
Start with the number 19 and count till you get to 41. because anywhere between 19 billion and 41 billion is sitting in the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Fund. But we don't know. Our legislature doesn't know. Our governor doesn't know. No one knows. We don't know from the insurance companies how much is in that Catastrophic Claims Fund. The other thing that we don't know is what insurance companies are really charging us without redlining, because we don't have that. We live in a world where your credit score, your neighbor's driving record, the neighbor 3 houses down's driving record, the guy who lives 2 blocks over, the guy who used to live next door to you, their driving record, seemingly everybody's but your own determines your auto insurance rate. Redlining is discriminatory, it is often racist, and it has to be repealed. And we also have to enforce greater transparency in the Catastrophic Claims Fund so we know what the heck is in it. So as your next state representative, we will bring transparency to that fund. One thing I will not do, though, is accept tort reform where we cap liabilities.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, how do you define sanctuary cities and do you support them?
So this is a really touchy topic. You know, I asked my dad, well, I don't want to hear the hour-long screaming fest from him. Laws are laws, but there's a point where, you know, your morals come into place. And ripping families apart and sending people who have been here their entire lives, you know, to a country that they don't even speak the language. I don't agree with that. I agree with keeping our people who work here every day here. Sanctuary cities is a topic that, you know, it can be touchy. It's a, you know, I've never been to a sanctuary city. I've never thought of it as a Michigan issue because, you know, I've cared more about public education and mass transit than I have about a federal issue, so.
I define a sanctuary city as a welcoming city, a place that everybody can call home without the fear of having their family ripped apart and being deported. A city where everybody, no matter what language you speak, no matter what food you eat, no matter what God you pray to, no matter what culture you celebrate, you are welcome in that community. Ripping families apart like they did to the Garcia family downriver, sending a man who had been here for 32 years, back to Mexico because our clown of a president, excuse me, but our clown of a president decided that, you know, he's a threat, he's a danger to people in this country. That is bogus. That man has a family. That man has kids. That man has a livelihood that has been ripped apart and taken away because of this bogus notion that we have all these illegal aliens. And in my mind, no one's illegal. But all these illegal aliens running around committing these bogus crimes that just don't exist. A sanctuary city is a welcoming city, and I want to make both Wayne and Westland welcoming cities from people of every background.
So I'll tell you, honestly, I don't have a definition. I don't define that. I think that's probably a term that means different things in different places. But I'll tell you what I do believe is that we need to approach immigration issues with compassion. Right now, there's probably not enough compassion in our immigration system. As a resident of Metro Detroit my whole life, I have several friends who are immigrants, people from Europe, people from South America, from Asia, from the Middle East. We are such a diverse area, and that's our strength. That's one of our strengths. But what I do believe is that we shouldn't be breaking up families. I don't want to see mothers ripped away from their children. I don't think that's the way to approach it. But as it has been said, the law is the law. If people are engaging in criminal activity, they shouldn't be able to run across some city line and say, well, you can't get me now. That's not going to work in Michigan.
Next question, we'll start with Mr. McDermott. Would you sponsor a bill to have universal gun background checks in Michigan and to extend the age to 21?
Absolutely, and I'll do a whole heck of a lot more than that too. We can't witness another Parkland. We can't witness another massacre like we saw in Texas. We can't keep waiting. Our kids, our teachers, our parents can't keep waiting. Not only will I extend background checks for a longer waiting period, I will work to raise the buying age to 21. We will have tougher screening for mental health because I think of my uncle, my mom's brother, who I love dearly. My Uncle Jim is paranoid schizophrenic, and while I love him, I would not want him to be in possession of any type of firearm. And I'm sure that many of you would be thankful that he wasn't either. There's much more we can do legislatively on that regard as well. We have to look at the types of weapons, magazine stocks, that we allow to be legal as well. There are many gun owners in my family, responsible gun owners who own handguns, hunting rifles, but so-called weapons of war have no place in our society and no place anywhere near our schools.
June 12th, 2015. I woke up that morning celebrating Pride. It was June. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
Mr. Coleman's turn.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Could I hear the question one more time, please?
Yes, I will. Would you sponsor a bill to have universal gun background checks in Michigan and to extend the age to 21?
I would be in favor of extending the age to 21. As far as background checks go, the gun show loophole should be closed. I don't think we should be able to just pass guns around like they're anything else. Obviously, people who have a history of violence, threats, or mental breakdowns, or maybe who are heavily medicated, maybe those people should be looked at a little closer.
June 12th. Sorry. I woke up after having just spent the previous day celebrating at Park Plaza Gay Pride. I woke up to 47 dead bodies. A domestic terrorist attack on the LGBT community by a man with a gun who shouldn't have had a gun. He was on the FBI watch list and nothing was done. He was able to buy a gun. Yeah, I believe in background checks. I believe if you're on a watch list somewhere, you should be able to own a gun. I believe in background checks. I believe in preventing people that have mental illness from owning a gun. I also believe in responsible gun ownership. That if you go to buy a gun, you should have to wait 3 days. You should have to attend a class on how to clean the gun, how to use the gun, so that we can make sure that people who have the guns and have firearms can be responsible.
Mr. Coleman. What would be the first bill you would introduce if elected, and why?
I would ask the legislature to boost road funding. We know that there was something passed, but it doesn't take full effect till 2021. I don't think Metro Detroit drivers would agree that we can wait for full funding for three more years, or maybe even 4 more years till you see results. Right away, I would say, let's get this road funding, let's get this funded, let's get our roads fixed.
So, with that, the first bill that I would get passed would be, or introduce, would be an amendment to Elliott Larson, but that's more of a personal goal. The first bill that I would get introduced is to get state revenue sharing back to the cities. Let's get the $8 million that the city of Wayne has lost over the last 10 years back to the city. Let's get Wayne and West End fully funded from the state so that they can operate, they can fix their city roads, they can fix their water mains. Let's make the cities whole again. And then amend Elliott Larson. So that's just my 2 first bills.
In 1938, in the city of Flint, Michigan, men and women sat down on a strike at the General Motors plant to form the United Auto Workers. This is the state of Walter Reuther, and to me it is absolutely incredible that we are now a state that busts unions and attacks collective bargaining rights. So the very first piece of legislation that I would enact or propose in committee would be to repeal the anti-union right to work law and restore full collective bargaining power to the men and women of organized labor. Because when unions are strong, we all succeed across the middle class. When they have good wages, we all have good wages. The reason we have paid time off, paid vacation, healthcare benefits at work, the reason we built a middle class here in Michigan and gave it to the rest of the world is because of the men and women of the UIW and organized labor all across the state.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Johnson will start. What changes would you make to reverse the trend of groundwater removal, such as by Nestle?
I would, work with across the aisle to protect the environment of the state of Michigan. That's one of our treasures. We're the Great Lakes state. Why are we lending our water out or letting someone extract our water from us? That is our heritage. That is where we live. They're talking the next 100 years how the Great Lakes are going to be one of the few sources of drinkable water in this country. We need to do everything we can now to protect our water versus letting it be extracted or possibly damaged by the extraction or by fracking or all of that. Let's protect our water, let's protect our air, let's protect our earth.
A multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation, Nestle, is being subsidized by the state of Michigan because they pay a lousy $200 fee to extract our groundwater, to steal our groundwater and our water for the Great Lakes, to bottle it. Meanwhile, people in Flint, if you had this debate in Flint, they wouldn't pour out water that looks like this. Their water is lead contaminated. Their water is poison. Their water gave people Legionnaire's disease. So I would stop Nestle from stealing our groundwater. And if they're not willing to pay a bigger fine, I would work with the MDEQ and say that they cannot extract the groundwater, period. But we have to impose a stricter, tougher fine on Nestle. We have to protect the state that provides the world 20% of its fresh water. And we have to do something to finally clean up the lead pipes and the catastrophe, the human catastrophe that has happened to the people in Genesee County and the city of Flint.
Thank you. I'm glad the subject of Flint came up because that's something that I think probably disturbs most of the people who live in our state. As far as Nestle and other corporations doing their water grab and sucking up our water for so cheap, we need to start charging them more to do that, and we need to put a cap on how much they tap. You know, right now they're tapping an unlimited amount, or you know they just pay a certain fee, and it's millions and millions and millions of gallons of our water being sucked up. We know that's not good for our groundwater system. We know that's not good for water levels. We need reasonable restrictions on that. I'll fight for that.
Okay, the next question will start with Mr. McDermott. Would you support reform to the redistricting process in Michigan, which would depend on an independent redistricting committee that would include representatives from both parties? Why and why not?
I absolutely would support that, and I was actually proud to carry around the clipboard for the Voters Not Politicians initiative and collect signatures to make sure that that gets on the ballot. And thankfully, it will be on the ballot. We're a blue state. We're a Democratic state. We're almost a 60-40 blue state, yet our representation in Lansing, our representation in Washington, D.C. is majority Republican because they have rigged the system against all of us. They have rigged the system against voters by gerrymandering and drawing insane district lines to determine where our boundaries are. So I would absolutely support reforming our district maps with an independent commission. And that's why I worked with Voters Not Politicians to make sure that it got on the ballot. And it will pass in November. And when I go door to door throughout the community, this is something that I talk to Wayne and West End residents about, and will continue to until we get this ballot initiative passed and signed in November.
Our current system of gerrymandering that we have in our state and nationwide, we know that discriminates people's voices, their voices at the ballot box. It limits their voices, it quiets their voices. I want to be a loud voice for our residents in District 16. I want to see the Voters Not Politicians initiative pass. I'll be voting yes on that ballot proposal. I've been supporting them on social media. I want to know that my vote counts. I want to know that your vote counts. And I want to know that everybody's vote across our state counts. I love the people here, but we're not being represented fairly in our government. We know that.
When I go to the ballot box in November, or even in August, I won't be able to vote for my own state representative, Bob Kozowski, for state senate, because Wayne and West End are one state house district. But then you look at the state senate map, and Wayne is taking the chunk out of what our district used to be. It goes, West End goes round, and it's An amazing district, Wayne goes, ooh, Livonia. Why are the people that I'm voting for, that West Bloomfield and Livonia and Farmington Hills are voting for the same people? Gerrymandering in this state is ridiculous. Gerrymandering in this entire country is crazy. But we need to start here in the state of Michigan. I am voting yes on the independent redistricting committee.
Mr. Coleman. What are your thoughts about going to a part-time legislature and ending term limits?
I know that our Lieutenant Governor Kelly had petitioned statewide to try to create a part-time legislature on the basis that it would limit lobbying and limit the politics up in Lansing. It would create more honest politicians. I'm not sure that he's right on that. I don't agree with him on that. If you have a part-time legislature that only works a few months of the year and you're squeezing in all those bills into those months, those politicians, those people who get elected, they're away doing other jobs. They're not focused on the issues year-round. You're not going to have that voice 365 days a year. You're going to have lobbyists throwing even more money at them to try to limit your voice and try to get corporate influence even injected further into our system in Lansing if you have a part-time legislature.
I'm against a part-time legislature, just not because I'm running, but also because the legislature and the judicial branch and the executive branch all work to be checks and balances against each other. If the governor, the legislature meets X amount of days a year, unless the governor calls the legislature to Lansing because there's a crisis, another Flint happens. Legislature should be there having committee investigating. The governor is not going to call them to investigate himself. We need a full-time legislature. We need full-time representation in Lansing to hold the entirety of government accountable, not just sometimes accountable. And term limits create a system where we are consistently every 6 years going, okay, it's your turn. We like you, but wait, it's your turn. It's this guy's turn this year. 6 years we'll elect you. It creates more special interests and more lobbyists so that good special interests can crown who they want in their districts.
Government should be responsible for people's needs. And when it stops working is when it becomes responsible to special interests and lobbyist needs. And that's what we have right now with term limits. I'm 100% opposed to term limits because it creates lobbying in overdrive. They have 6 years to lobby these representatives, then they're out and they've got to get the next batch in and lobby them really quickly in 6 years, and then they're out. We have created an assembly line of lobbyist folks, and it is not good. We have to repeal term limits, and we have to give people back their voice to say, I want my representative to serve me as long as I would like. The other thing in terms of Lieutenant Governor Kelly's proposal for a part-time legislature, when we face crises in our community, like Flint, or the bankruptcy in Detroit, or Inkster Public Schools getting shut down, or any number of future crises that could arrive, we need a legislature that is responsive to us and responsive to the situation. If you have a part-time legislature, there is no way, unless the governor calls a special legislative session, that they can possibly be responsive.
Thank you. This will have to be the final question. It's question number 14, so we've done pretty well. Wealth, and we'll start with Mr. Johnson. Okay. Welfare dollars are channeled into private college scholarships and benefiting upper middle income families instead of low income families. What steps can you take to fix this?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Welfare dollars are channeled into private college scholarships, benefiting upper middle income families instead of low income families.
Well, let's fix the problem. Let's make college affordable again. Let's start there. Let's start with the fact that University of Michigan had a $520 million budget surplus last year, but is cutting lecturer pay because, oh, it's not in the budget. You had $520 million. Let's stop funding so radically to these schools and stop funding private scholarships, because let's make college affordable again. Let's make community college free so that you can go and you can go get an associate's degree, you can go get career training and be a responsible citizen in the state of Michigan and have a job and have a career and have a trade or whatever it is you please. So yes, I would cut welfare dollars to private scholarships because we need to create a better education system for the entire state of Michigan that works for everyone and not just those who can afford it.
So in 2014, we had a state senator named Gretchen Whitmer who proposed what is called the 2020 College Plan. And as your next state representative, that is something I plan to revive. So we can make the scholarship system work for low-income families by making college tuition free, as it should be. When my mother went to school in 1972, and she may not want me to give you the date, but 1972, Eastern Michigan University, she worked at Westland Mall at what used to be Hudson's in the lamp department. And she paid her tuition and books working in the lamp department at Hudson's. I worked 30 hours a week going to school for Rite Aid Pharmacy. There was no way I could even cover my books, let alone tuition, parking, food, gas. So we can revive the 2020 plan and we can make college tuition free so that when we look at scholarships, we don't have to worry about it because every student in the state of Michigan has an equal opportunity to go to not only a college, but a skilled trade program as well, tuition free.
So we know that our school aid fund in the state of Michigan has been boosted with dollars from our unemployment fund. There are several people in Metro Detroit and statewide who rely on help from the state. And that doesn't mean indefinitely, that doesn't mean free money, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be looking for work, that doesn't mean that we're just giving people a lavish lifestyle. There's this misconception out there that people who are on unemployment are just, stealing your tax dollars. We need to be compassionate. We need to fund vocational and skilled trades education so those people who may be on unemployment can go look for jobs and they'll have the ability to go look for jobs. We need criminal justice reform so people with felonies can turn their lives around and go find work. It's really robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're taking that unemployment money and you're putting it in the school aid fund. Let's fund both.
Thank you. Now we'll start with Mr. McDermott and have 1 minute to tell us why you should be elected.
A lot of people ask me when I go door to door and listen to voters, why you, why now? This is personal for me. You may not be able to see it all the way in the back, but this photograph right here is from my graduation at Wayne State University. And the other guy in this photo is my dad, Mike McDermott. And in 2008, when greed from Wall Street and corporate America wrecked our economy, it wrecked my dad's life. It wrecked his 401k. It wrecked his retirement, 40 years worth of savings. And ultimately, when it came to pass in 2016, it wrecked his house because he got, like many Americans, foreclosed on. I'm running to make the system work for people like us, for middle class, hardworking people. We bail out corporations all the time. We give tax breaks to people at the top. We run with trickle-down economics. Meanwhile, we get union busting rammed through, collective bargaining attacked, and our way of life attacked. I'm running for people like you.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson.
So you should vote for me in August because we need a new voice in Lansing. We need new blood in Lansing. I'm young, I'm ready to go, and I'm not going to give up the fight. I've lived here my entire life. I went to school here. I know the troubles of Wayne Westland. I know the troubles of Metro Detroit. I want to go to Lansing and be your voice because that is a voice that has been silenced for so long. I live in Wayne, we're 6 square miles. It's time that Wayne used that 6 square miles and that we had a voice in Lansing, had a voice in the governor's mansion, that we had somebody go and be and represent Wayne Pride every day.
I just want to tell you that I really, truly am so grateful that you're all here, that you all came, that you care enough to be here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters again. I want to thank Presbyterian Village again. I want to thank our current state rep for all the great work he's done. I want to fill his shoes. Those are big shoes to fill. But I tell you that I have too big of a heart to fail. I'm not going to quit. I grew up in a UAW household. I grew up in Redford Township, moved to Westland when I was a kid, stayed here. I love it here. I worked for a local business, Westland Music, and helped them run their business. I helped do lessons over there. I served on the city council. For me, it's about building relationships. I have relationships with other state representatives who are already in office. I have relationships with our city officials, our county officials. I'm going to be able to hit the ground running. I'm going to bring my passion, my heart, and truly, I truly love everybody that's here, and I care.
Thank you. We'd like to thank the candidates who participated in tonight's 16th District State Representative Forum. At the primary election on August the 7th, voters will need to choose either a Republican or a Democratic ballot. And your choices in the primary are restricted to that party, no crossover. The Democratic candidate who earns the most votes will face off against the Republican candidate and other party candidates in the general election, November 6th. We will now take a 5-minute break and then set up for the State Senate. Thank you.